for the local papers as a photographer, and he manages to get this one. If we look hard, there it is. Glad he caught it.
Yeah.
This is my biggest boomerang, 4 foot 8.5 inches from tip to tip, made by Bunny Reid. Two-hand job for me, but here's you with your biggest tone, and she's just one hand. Very effective remover of photographers.
Yes. 2.222 metres for the BAA formula.
It's very, very flexible the way you wobble it around. Notice you don't try a foot catch with this one.
No.
Bunny didn't bring his big boomerangs along. I remember this particular time. The biggest he had was his 3 foot one.
That's right. He'd won it the year before.
He had, yeah, and he didn't bother to bring it. So I think you won that, and I came in second, the biggest. Here's Barry Forsyth, throwing in the Aussie round very effectively. I used to always love watching Bunny throw.
Yes, very sharp, low action.
Yes.
Very consistent thrower.
Very graceful throw. Dennis Maxwell actually won this championship, particular day. George Tunstall from Witchy Proof again.
Gee, we had a lot of spectators, didn't we?
Didn't we, eh? Always had to fight them back.
Coming by the plane load.
Yes, at this particular championships, Dennis Maxwell came in first with a grand total of 229 points. That was for 20 throws. Barry Forsyth was second with 224. Bunny Reid was third with 223. And I came in fourth on 214, followed by Bob Burwell on 192.
Interesting, only 5 points apart, first and second, and 1 point between second and third. It's very close.
Very close competition.
Once again, the consistency of the Albury weather allows that. You get really put on your mettle.
Chris Westall. Here's old Arthur coming out now to show the young fellas how it's really done. 76 at this stage. There's Les. Les turned 81 that year.
That's accurate return.
Here's a nice one. Well caught there, Tony.
And I think that was a Bunny Reid hook.
Yes, poor old Bob Burwell just couldn't catch him on the film. The films always ran out when we'd come up to Bob. Well, of course, finally, the big event came, Australia versus the USA. And they landed in Melbourne, and the first competition was actually the Victorian state team against the Americans, and this was down in Melbourne, down where at present the Olympic swimming pool is now built.
All right.
Yeah, and the tennis court, the big tennis courts are also down there.
These were 2 of Chris Henskin's students playing the didgeridoo, weren't they? He taught them.
Yes, they got them a real Aboriginal greeting. It was quite windy this day. There's Chet Snoffer, for most years the top thrower really. In most events, certainly in gymnastic events. Here's Bunny Reid in the opening fast catch. He did quite well for us considering the windy conditions.
Yes. It was interesting hearing the Americans commenting later that they were really worried when they saw Bunny throwing first up there.
This is Larry Roof. We had the 2 Roof brothers throwing, Larry and Peter. Peter was the left-hander and Larry's the right-handed one. Both quite good MTA throwers. And, Peter Roof, a very good distance thrower too. Chris Hensgen, an American throwing for an Australia.
Yes.
Eric Darnell, who's since made his name well and truly throughout the world with his plastic boomerang that he's produced, plus other boomerangs that he makes.
No, I think he only came out here with 2 boomerangs for this.
Yes.
And he could do wonders with them.
Young Robbie Kroll. And Doug Dufresne. When they arrived, I actually held the fast catch record with 35 seconds. When we got to Albury, Doug broke that record with 33.3, I think it was. Here's Chet, experiencing the frustrations of Melbourne weather.
Yes.
Pounces like a panther.
That's where being a gymnastics coach pays off.
It does, yes. This was Jeff Rawson, one of the throwers from the earlier years of the association. I think he might have been one of the founding members, actually. I think this was the only competition that Jeff threw at. Barnaby Roo, he's been throwing ever since. Throwing all around the world, knocking apples off his head, all sorts of tricks.
Yes, a real showman.
That's right, one of the real characters of the boomerang world. Then Ben Roo, of course, who was the man that got all this going, himself with Ali Miller. Jerry Kaplan. Jerry could throw right and left-handed. There's Ali Miller, the one-woman thrower in the team, and she also acted as judge. One MTA went right across onto those roofs over there. We're into the MTA throwing now. Billy Knight with his famous dog. Jerry Kaplan. No, sorry, this is Peter Roof. Larry Roof. Larry Roof winding up for the MTA. I think at this stage Larry might have held the record for MTA throwing with something like 22 seconds. Jerry Kaplan. And Chris Hensgen. Now this is Peter Roof.
We had a big debate about wearing gloves, didn't we, before this, because we were concerned about the image of the sport.
Yes.
And people thought it was dangerous.
Yes, well, when the Americans came out for this event, of course, they had nothing down in writing as regards events. There was much discussions went on prior to the events. I think if you're going to have international competitions, you do have to have things down pretty clearly in writing.
Well, I really think that was one of the pluses of this particular time, because it forced us as an association to be very particular about what the rules were.
Here's the distance throwing now. The markers standing on the poles, and we've got big famous Al Gearhards about to toss one out. Very hard, of course, to track a boomerang for that distance throwing. And then Bob Burwell. See, there was no gentle breeze that day. Big Al Gearhards. He's since retired from competitive throwing. Dennis Maxwell, the commentator.
This was an absolute classic photo in the paper of Big Al with the Janetskis, wasn't it?
That's right, side by side.
The long and the short of it.
Carl Naylor. Carl came out 2 years prior to this to sort of see the scene. This is the late Steve Miller, Ali Miller's husband, who sadly died a year or so later of a heart attack.
As I recall, we needed his surgical skills on the field in the long distance event, didn't we?
That's right. Yes, Peter Roof, not watching a Bob Burwell long distance throw, that came back and split his head open. And after being stitched up by Steve, he continued on to come in second place.
That's right.
Well, then we headed off to Witchyproof, up to Bunny Reed country, but of course the roadworks were on and the stop sign was up, so it was time to examine the local bush and see if we could find any of the local denizens.
I think we found some shingleback skinks, didn't we, along here?
I think you might find them here. I think Barnaby Roo did find time to do a bit of meditating too. There's the effervescent Chet and Catherine, Morris's wife. There's Barnaby, soaking up the sunshine. Yes. Even time for a cuppa. So nothing's in a rush in Australia.
No.
Now here you've found your friend. Is he nice shingleback?
Yes, nice shingleback.
So not to be outdone, after his partner is Barnaby Roo. Plenty of cameras going there. Now Barnaby's got his mate.
Yes, Ben was really fascinated with them.
Yeah. Now, on the road into Cobram, they could not resist testing out one of their boomerangs, which ended up you-know-where.
Yes.
And so Chet's great prowess was discovered when he climbed up onto that roof to retrieve the boomerang. Here we are at Jackie Byam's place at Cobram. He's got a great boomerang museum there and all sorts of artefacts. Pretty wide media coverage at this stage too.
It was, yes, it was very good.
I think Jackie's given the cigarettes away since, after a few heart attacks. That was his work shop.
Yes, his natural timber ones are really nicely done, weren't they?
That's his little room where he has the exhibition of things there. Made up these marvellous maps with the Aboriginal implements on them, and this one was presented to the Americans.
A lot of work in that.
Yes. Here's Chet giving us a demonstration of juggling. This is up at Albury. Goes Chet again.
And if Barnaby was famous for the apple on the head trick, Chet was famous for the backflip before the catch, wasn't he?
That's right. I think Chet's up over the 500 mark for juggling now in the world record ranks. Which is great enough for just ordinary catching.